do this. So this is June 2022, 424. Question number 1. So this question is about lease or buy equipment. So these questions are very common. I won't waste much of my time to read through. I'm really making short videos without so much explanations. But I just want to give you some tips that will guide you. So when you are dealing with such a question where they ask you at the end of the day, should Shanshan lease or buy? Here's the strategy I want you to know, since you don't really have so much time, Madam Tinga. So kayama question ya leisa palana, but you got two ways of answering or the things that you look at. There is that with advance payment and that with payments being made at the end of the period. So the one I'm having right now, I'm answering the one with advance payments being made at the beginning of the period. So should Kennedy Electronic Shanshan buy or lease the equipment? So when you see such a question, here are the steps that you need to have in mind that can help you. I'll come back to the question. I'm going to the camera. Okay, so okay, so step 1, you need to collect the data, and the most important data that you need to collect in Tinga is one. When we're talking about this question, they'll give you the cost of whatever equipment they're dealing with. So in our case, we have the cost of the equipment. Another thing, they'll give you the period. These are the things. You just don't waste your time to stress yourself to understand the question. Look out for these things to make your life easy. Look at the cost of whatever equipment in question. Then for how long is it going to be leased? Then look out for the tax rate. They'll also give you the interest rate. Let's say if the interest rate, let's say if someone decides to use debt alternative, there's an interest rate affiliated to that. So 1, 2, 3, 4. So look out for this information for a start. So in my case, I'll go back to the question. Shan has decided to acquire a piece of equipment that's a cost. It's costing 148,000. So alright, you've seen, I've identified one thing, cost of equipment I've written. Another thing, to be used in fabrication, if it were to be leased, the manufacturer will provide such finance over 7 years. So period, if they were to whatever, it will be leased or for 7 years, whatever period. The lease call for annual. Another thing, information number, it's payment. So you get the payments. Number payments, you have to read nicely so that you understand whether it's advance payment or payments made at the end of the period, and whether they are uniform payments or the payments keep fluctuating. So in our case, they are saying the terms of the lease call for annual payment, annual done once in a year, 27,500. Lease payments are made in advance. So you write 27,500. You even put advance pay. So let me show you what I'm saying. So you've seen I'm collecting the data. I saw in the question, I didn't waste my time trying to read everything, but I saw that there is a cost of the equipment. I do not even need to know what equipment we're dealing with. We are trying to work very fast. I'm trying to give you the tips, but with time, it's necessary that you read for understanding and help others. But for now, as a learner, what is the fastest strategy that you can use? Look out for the cost. you write the period of how long it's going to be leased. The tax, when you read in the question, you find that it's 40% tax. Then there is also the interest rate, which we are going to use. It's 12%. So there is this 12%, we only use it per portion per month. I'll show you. But when we are making a lease alternative or debt alternative, we don't really use this percentage. We only use this percentage. I repeat, very important, interest rate of 12%. We are using it when we are making the amortization table. That's when we jump to solving for the debt alternative. So when you write this information, that's step 1. Just write the information. Look out for these 5 things. If you can find these 5 things, you are safe. The other thing is just you being careful and doing your calculations properly. That's my step 1 for you, Madam Ting. Next step, call it step 2. Step 2 is where you calculate the cost of debt. You've been given the interest rate, you've been given the tax, you've been given the cost, the payment. You calculate the cost of debt. Formula cost of debt, you need to learn that cost of debt is equals to interest 1 minus t. So cost of debt is equals to the interest. You put the 12% the way it is without changing it to decimal. 1 minus c, then tax him or to all my decimals. Okay, so when you put this the way it is on your calculator, you punch, you should get 7.2% or 0.072. That's your cost of debt. So we are going to use this Gatwapanga lease alternative. Remember, I want to repeat something very important. This 12% will only use it per the amortization table. But this rate that we found, they to allow as our interest factor. So let's say if you are someone who is using AMA tables, and like us professors who don't use tables, if you are someone who uses a table, this is the rate you're going to look for. But again, it's very difficult to find such rates. So you might want to know your formulas. But yeah, this is your step 2. What are you doing? You are answering the equation. Should they lease or buy the item? Then your step 3. Okay, your step 3 now, that's where you write the first alternative. Remember, we have 2 alternatives, leasing or buying. When we say buying, that's why you go with a debt alternative. You borrow money to buy. Okay, so you still have to pay. Yeah, so lease alternative. What's this? Whatever that is. So now lease alternative. Okay, you write your year, your cash flows, your tax, your net cash flows, IF, interest factor, PV. In simple terms, what we are trying to do is that, remember, you've been given what? The payments that you'll be making annually. In our case, under the lease alternative, we're saying they'll be paying 27,500 annually, and these are advance payments. So in simple terms, what am I trying to do when you prepare this table is that you just want to remove tax from that payment and see what you remain with. As simple as I want to explain things in simple terms. You remove tax from your cash flow, then you have your net cash flow because you've subtracted. It's net, you've removed tax. After removing tax, then you multiply your net cash flow with your interest factor value. Which interest factor value are we going to use? We are going to use this 7.2%. That's the whole point of us doing this calculation. So when we come here, remember that these are advance payments. So whenever you have advance payments in your question, remember that you are starting in year 0, because there's a first payment that is made. It doesn't attract tax, it doesn't attract interest, it just comes out the same way it is, because the payment is made there and then. It's not affiliated to time. Okay, when you want to connect it to time, it's equals to 0. That's why it makes no difference. So in year 0, our cash flow, remember each year we're making 27,500. So our tax, of course, it's 40%, right? But for the fact that this payment is an advance payment, we put a dash. Net cash flow, this will come out the same way. IF, this is where we have our 7.2%. So now what you are simply doing is this is a payment. When you go on your tables, I don't know what you call those tables, but those tables, when you want to apply this rate on this value. But in our case, remember that this is year 0, right? So in year 0, our interest factor will be just 1, meaning that this value will just come out the same way. Now remember to say the period, when you go back here, affiliated is 7 years, in other words. That's our period. So number, for the fact that we have an advance payment, here is a key thing, and one payment being made in year 0, so our period, instead of being 7, all right, remember these are uniform payments, so no need of me writing ama payments as 1, 2 chimline kwati inafuma kumansa. No, write 1 to 6. 1 to why do I say 1 to 6 when they said 7? Because there's a payment which is being made in year 0. So Pama 7 payments here, Tualashala with 6 payments. So 6 other payments will be made from year 1 to 6. So same payments, right? 27,500. So now here the tax applies. This is not year 0. So you just do 40% of 27,500. That's why you get 11,000. But this one, we're going to put it in the brackets. Why? Because we're removing the tax from the cash flow. When you remove the tax from the cash flow, maybe I do this, when you remove the tax from the cash flows, you remain with when you do this minus that, you remain with 16,500. But in our case, assuming that you know your annuity formula, Karaka formula, Karaka 1 minus 1 plus R to the power negative n/t over R. Because, why are we using that? Because we've got a series of payments that are uniform. It's not one payment, but there are 6 payments. We use that formula. But when you have one payment, we Karaka formula to compare. No, assuming that you know your non-cane. So here we apply now this 7.2. When you do 16,500 of 7.2, or in other words, what value are we going to have here that will multiply with that? We'll produce ngamwapa table, make sure you confirm. So you do this multiplied by that, you have that, right? Oh, sorry. So hopefully you've seen how this value has come. To this multiplied by that, we produce that. Now, remember that our tax, since we have 7 payments, meaning that our tax should apply to 7 payments. Since there's a tax value which was not subtracted in year 0, that value of tax will bring it in year 7. So you write here 7, where we won't have a cash flow because we don't have any payment in year 7, but we'll bring down the tax here, of which our net cash flow here will have this tax, Ah, okay. To save our battery, so here again, remember this is not a value of an annuity. So hopefully you are very familiar with your tables where you use present value of an annuity and present value of a single payment. Very important thing. There's a single payment. There's where you go on a table where it's just a single payment. In our case, this 11,000, it's a single payment, so we want to go on a present value of an annuity like this one, which had a series of payment, right? No, but this one. So when you go on our table, look for this value. You have in year 7, okay, this is done in year 7, so 0. So remember, this is negative, this is tax we're subtracting from our cash flows. So when you do this multiplied by that, we are going to have this, right? When you do your math, so what are we trying to find? We're trying to find what we call present value of cash flows. So in other words, we had the cash flows, we just want to bring them to the present. So when you do your calculations, this will bring us to 98,904 kwacha. So that's under your lease alternative. So that's your step 3. Step 4. Okay. Step 4 now. Step 4, assuming that you've known the first alternative and you've known the present value of your cash flow, under this alternative it's this one. So the other, it's a debt alternative. With debt alternative, the first thing that you need to start with is the amortization table. So under debt alternative, when we go back to our question, okay, there's a value of payment that is also done annually. Let me go back to the question. So I recorded 27,500, 7 years period, 148. If you can see that, there's 148,000 that's we used. So these values, 40% tax, 12% interest rate. So now, going on to the other alternative, we'll look at the information here. After these 2 lines where you have year and depreciation, at the end of 7 years, the equipment is expected to have a scrap value of 15,000 if it's purchased. Kennedy Electronics would be entitled to this residual value as it would be the owner of the asset. If the asset is purchased, Kennedy Electronics is assumed to finance it entirely with 12% unsecured term loan. Its payment schedule of the same configuration as the lease payment schedule, assuming it's taken out of time 0 Shanshani. Without wasting much of the time, just know that you're doing lease or buy. So just focus on the values before you confuse yourself with these statements. So in my case, annual payments 28 at the beginning of the year. So this is still